This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Harvester by Jean Stratton-Porter. Read by Cindy Steib. Characters: David Langston, a harvester of the woods. Ruth Jameson, a girl of the city. Granny Moreland, an interested neighbor. Dr. Carey, chief surgeon of the Onabasha Hospital. Mrs. Carey, wife of the doctor. Dr. Harmon, who concludes to leave the city. Molly Barnett, a hospital nurse with a heart. Henry Jameson, a trader without a heart. Alexander Heron, who made a concession. Mrs. Heron, a gentle woman. The Kennedys, Philadelphia lawyers. Chapter 1. Belshazzar's Decision. Bel, come here. The harvester sat in the hollow, worn in the hewed log stoop by the feet of his father and mother and his own sturdier tread, and rested his head against the casing of the cabin door when he gave the command. The tip of the dog's nose touched the gravel between his paws as he crouched flat on earth, with beautiful eyes steadily watching the master, but he did not move a muscle. Bel, come here. Twinkles flashed in the eyes of the man when he repeated the order, while his voice grew more imperative as he stretched a lean, wiry hand toward the dog. The animal's eyes gleamed and his sensitive nose quivered, yet he lay quietly. Belshazzar, come and see here. The body of the dog arose on straightened legs, and his muzzle dropped in the outstretched palm. A wind, slightly perfumed with the odor of melting snow and unsheathing buds, swept the lake beside them, and lifted a waving tangle of light hair on the brow of the man, while a level ray of the setting sun flashed across the water and illumined the graven, sensitive face, now alive with keen interest in the game being played. Bel, dost remember the day? Inquired the harvester. The eager attitude and anxious eyes of the dog betrayed that he did not, but was waiting with every sense alert for a familiar word that would tell him what was expected. Surely you heard the killdeers crying in the night, prompted the man. I called your attention when the ecstasy of the first bluebird waked the dawn. All day you have seen the gold yellow and blood red osiers, the sap wet maples, and spring tracing announcements of her arrival on the sunny side of the levee. The dog found no clue, but he recognized tones he loved in the suave, easy voice, and his tail beat his sides in vigorous approval. The man nodded gravely. Ah, so, then you realize this day to be the most important of all the coming year to me, this hour, a solemn one that influences my whole after life. It is time for your annual decision on my fate for a 12-month. Are you sure you are fully alive to the gravity of the situation, Bel? The dog felt himself safe in answering a rising inflection ending in his name, uttered in that tone, and wagged eager assent. Well then, said the man, which shall it be? Do I leave home for the noise and grime of the city, open an office, and enter the money-making scramble? Every word was strange to the dog, almost breathlessly waiting for a familiar syllable. The man gazed steadily into the animal's eyes. After a long pause, he continued, Or do I remain at home to harvest the golden seal, mullein, and ginseng, not to mention an occasional hour with the black bass, or tramps for partridge and cottontails? The dog recognized each word of that. Before the voice ceased, his sleek sides were quivering, his nostrils twitching, his tail lashing, and at the pause he leaped up and thrust his nose against the face of the man. The harvester leaned back laughing in his deep, full-chested tones. Then he patted the dog's head with one hand and renewed his grip with the other. "Good old Bel!" he cried exultantly. 6 years you have decided for me, and right, every time. We are of the woods, Belle, born and reared here, as our fathers before us. What would we of the campfire, the long trail, the earthy search, we harvesters of herbs the famous chemists require, what would we do in a city? And when the sap is rising, the bass splashing, and the wild geese honking in the night, we never could endure it, Belle. When we delivered that hemlock at the hospital today, did you hear that young doctor talking about his lid? Well, up there is ours, old fellow. Just sky and clouds overhead for us, forest wind in our faces, wild perfume in our nostrils, muck on our feet. That's the life for us. Our blood was tainted to begin with, and we've lived here so long it is now a passion in our hearts. If ever you sentence us to life in the city, you'll finish both of us. That's what you'll do. But you won't, will you? You realize what God made us for, and what He made for us, don't you, Belle?" As he lovingly patted the dog's head, the man talked, and the animal trembled with delight. Then the voice of the Harvester changed and dropped to tones of gravest import. "Now, how about that other matter, Belle? You always decide that too. The time has come again. Steady now. This is far more important than the other. Just to be wiped out, Belle, poof! That isn't anything, and it concerns no one save ourselves. But to bring misery into our lives and live with it daily, that would be a condition to rend the soul. So careful, Belle. Cautious now." The voice of the man dropped to a whisper as he asked the question, "What about the girl business?" Trembling with eagerness to do the thing that would bring more caressing, bewildered by unfamiliar words and tones, the dog hesitated. "Do I go on as I have ever since mother left me, rustling for grub, living in untrammeled freedom? Do I go on as before, Belle?" The Harvester paused and waited the answer, with anxiety in his eyes, as he searched the beast face. He had talked to that dog as most men commune with their souls, for so long, and played the game in such intense earnest that he felt the results final with him. The animal was immovable now, lost again, his anxious eyes watching the face of the master, his eager ears waiting for words he recognized. After a long time, the man continued slowly and hesitantly, as if fearing the outcome. He did not realize that there was sufficient anxiety in his voice to change its tones. "Or do I go courting this year? Do I rig up in uncomfortable store clothes and parade before the country and city girls and try to persuade the one I can get, probably not the one I would want, to marry me, and come here and spoil all our good times? Do we want a woman around scolding if we are away from home, whining because she is lonesome, fretting for luxuries we cannot afford to give her? Are you going to let us in for a scrape like that, Belle?" The bewildered dog could bear the unusual scene no longer. Taking the rising inflection that sounded more familiar for a cue and his name for a certainty, he sprang forward, his tail waving as his nose touched the face of the Harvester. Then he shot across the driveway and lay in the spice thicket, half the ribs of one side aching, as he howled from the lowest depths of dog misery. "You ungrateful cur!" cried the Harvester. "What has come over you? 6 years I have trusted you, and the answer has been right every time. Confound your picture! Sentence me to tackle the girl proposition? I see myself. Do you know what it would mean? For the first time you'd be chained while I pranced over the country like a half-broken colt, trying to attract some girl. I'd have to waste time I need for my work, and spend money that draws good interest while we sleep to tempt her with presents. I'd have to rebuild the cabin, and there's not a chance in 10 she would not fret the life out of me, whining to go to the city to live, arrange for her here the best I could. Of all the fool, unreliable dogs that ever